The rooster hadn't even crowed yet when Rosa pulled herself out of bed. Her bones ached the way they always did these days, but she didn't have time to think about that. The corn wasn't going to water itself, and with the dry season lasting longer each year, every morning counted. She splashed cold water on her face from the bucket by the door and tied her long black hair into a bun. Her small house was quiet. Her 3 kids were still sleeping in the next room, tangled up in their shared blankets. Lucia, her oldest at 16, had her arm thrown over her younger brother's. They looked peaceful, and Rosa wanted to keep it that way for as long as possible. Outside, the air was cool and clean. This was Rosa's favorite time of day before the sun turned brutal and before the world woke up with all its problems. She grabbed her water bucket and started walking toward her field. The path was worn smooth from years of her feet following the same route day after day. Her farm wasn't much to look at. Just a small patch of corn and beans that somehow kept her family fed barely. Her husband had worked this land before the fever took him 4 years ago. Now it was just her, doing the work of 2 people and trying not to think too hard about how impossible it all seemed sometimes. As she walked past the old warehouse at the edge of her property, something caught her eye. A small shoe, bright pink with cartoon characters on it, lying in the dirt near the building's corner. Rosa stopped. Kids from the village sometimes played around here, even though she'd told them not to. The warehouse had been abandoned for years and half the roof had caved in. It wasn't safe, but something about that shoe bothered her. It was too clean, too new, and it was just lying there alone like it had been dropped in a hurry. Rosa set down her bucket and walked closer. The morning was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. That's when she heard it, a sound so soft she almost missed it. A whimper like a hurt animal coming from behind the warehouse. Her first thought was to turn around and get help. Her second thought was that there might not be time for that. She picked up a thick stick from the ground just in case and moved toward the sound. Behind a pile of old wooden crates she found her, a little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, curled up on the ground. Her hands were tied behind her back with rough rope. There was tape over her mouth. Her dress was torn and dirty, and her eyes were so wide with fear that Rosa felt her heart crack open. "Oh my God," Rosa whispered, dropping the stick and falling to her knees beside the child. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. I'm here to help you." The girl flinched away, making a muffled sound behind the tape. Rosa could see the terror in her eyes, the way her whole body was shaking. How long had she been here? Who had done this? "I'm going to take this off now," Rosa said gently, reaching for the tape. "It might hurt a little, but then you can breathe better, okay?" She peeled the tape away as carefully as she could. The girl gasped and started crying, big gulping sobs that shook her whole body. Rosa worked on the ropes next, her fingers clumsy with urgency. The knots were tight and had rubbed the girl's wrists raw. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Rosa asked, finally getting the ropes loose. "Sophia," the girl whispered, her voice hoarse. "My name is Sophia." "Sophia, that's a beautiful name." "I'm Rosa. You're safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you." But even as she said it, Rosa's mind was racing. Safe? How could she promise that when she didn't even know what they were safe from? Someone had tied up this child and left her here. Someone might come back. Sophia threw her arms around Rosa's neck and held on like she was drowning. Rosa could feel how thin the girl was, how her ribs pressed against her small chest. She pulled off her own shawl and wrapped it around Sophia's shoulders. "Can you walk?" Rosa asked. Sophia nodded, but when she tried to stand, her legs buckled. Rosa caught her and lifted her up, surprised at how light she was. The girl couldn't have weighed more than 50 pounds. "We're going to my house," Rosa said. "It's not far. Just hold on to me." As she carried Sophia across the field, Rosa kept looking over her shoulder. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky pink and orange. It should have been beautiful, but all Rosa could think about was getting this child somewhere safe and figuring out what to do next. Her mind was spinning. She needed to call the police, but the nearest phone was at her neighbor's house and he wouldn't be awake for another hour. The police station was 15 kilometers away in town. She had no car, no phone of her own. She barely had enough money to feed her own kids, let alone deal with something like this. But looking down at Sophia's face, at the dried tears and the fear still swimming in her dark eyes, Rosa knew one thing for certain. Whatever it took, whatever she had to do, she would protect this child. Someone had thrown her away like garbage, had tied her up and left her in an abandoned building. Rosa didn't know who or why, but she knew evil when she saw it. When they reached her house, she pushed the door open with her foot. The noise woke her kids. Lucia sat up first, her eyes going wide when she saw Sophia. "Mama, what happened?" "Get some water and the clean towels," Rosa said, setting Sophia down on her own bed. "And wake your brothers. We need to move fast." Lucia didn't ask questions. She was a good girl, smart and quick. Within minutes, she had water boiling and was gently cleaning Sophia's face while Rosa examined her for injuries. There were bruises on her arms and legs. Her feet were cut and dirty like she'd been walking without shoes for a long time. "Sophia," Rosa said softly, kneeling beside the bed, "can you tell me what happened? Who did this to you?" The girl's eyes filled with tears again. "Bad men," she whispered. "They took me from the market. 3 days ago, my mama sent me to buy rice and they grabbed me, put me in a van." Rosa felt cold all over. 3 days. This child had been missing for 3 days and her mother must be going crazy with worry. "Were you alone?" Rosa asked, afraid of the answer. Sophia shook her head. "There were others. 5 other kids. They kept us in a room. Then yesterday they put us in a truck. But I got scared and tried to run when they stopped. One of the men caught me and tied me up. He said he'd come back for me after they delivered the others." Rosa's blood turned to ice. Delivered the others. She knew what that meant. She'd heard stories, seen news reports about children disappearing, about trafficking rings that moved through poor areas looking for victims nobody would fight too hard to find. "Where did they take the others?" Rosa asked. "I don't know. They said something about crossing the border, going to a big house where we'd work." Rosa looked at Lucia, who had gone pale. They both understood. These weren't just kidnappers. This was organized, professional, and that meant they were dangerous. "Lucia," Rosa said, standing up, "I need you to stay here with Sophia and your brothers. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me. Do you understand?" "Where are you going?" "To get help. To make sure these bad men don't hurt anyone else." She grabbed the keys to her neighbor's old motorcycle, the one he sometimes let her borrow. She didn't have time to ask permission. Every minute that passed was a minute those men might come back, might realize Sophia was gone, might disappear before anyone could stop them. As Rosa started the motorcycle, her hands were shaking. She was just a poor farmer. She had no power, no money, no connections. But she had something more important than any of that. She had a chance to do the right thing even if it scared her, especially because it scared her. The engine roared to life and Rosa pointed it toward town, toward the police station, toward whatever came next. Behind her in her small house, a little girl named Sophia was finally safe. And Rosa was going to make sure she stayed that way no matter what it cost. The motorcycle ride to town felt like it took forever and no time at all. Rosa's mind wouldn't stop racing, playing out every terrible possibility. What if the police didn't believe her? What if they were too slow? What if those men came back for Sophia while she was gone? The old motorcycle coughed and sputtered as she pushed it faster than it was meant to go. She'd borrowed it dozens of times to go to the market, but never like this. Never with her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. The police station was a small concrete building with peeling paint and bars on the windows. Rosa had only been inside once before, years ago, when someone stole her husband's tools. The police had taken her report and nothing ever came of it. She wasn't expecting much this time either, but she had to try. She burst through the door, still wearing her work clothes and covered in dust from the ride. 2 officers sat at a desk drinking coffee and looking half asleep. They glanced up at her with the kind of bored expression that said they'd seen 1,000 desperate people walk through that door. "Please," Rosa said, trying to catch her breath. "I found a child. A little girl. She was tied up near my property. She says men kidnapped her and other children. They're taking them across the border." The younger officer, who couldn't have been more than 25, sat up straighter, but the older one, a heavy-set man with gray in his mustache, just sighed. "Senora, do you know how many reports we get about missing children? About trafficking? If we investigated every story." "This isn't just a story," Rosa interrupted, her voice sharper than she intended. "I have the girl at my house right now. She's hurt. She's scared. She can tell you everything. But we need to move fast because the men who took her said they'd come back." Something in her voice must have convinced them, or maybe they just wanted to get her out of the station. Either way, the younger officer stood up and grabbed his radio. "Where's your property?" he asked. Rosa gave them directions, her words tumbling over each other. "The warehouse, the shoe, Sophia's story about the other children. The older officer was making notes now, his expression more serious. "We'll send a car to your house," he said.
"But I'm calling this into headquarters."
"If what you're saying is true, this is bigger than our station can handle." Within 20 minutes, Rosa was leading 2 police cars back to her farm. The sun was fully up now, turning everything bright and hot. As they got closer to her property, Rosa felt her stomach twist with worry. Please let Sophia still be there. Please let her kids be safe. Lucia had followed instructions. The door was locked, and it took several knocks before she opened it, keeping the chain on until she saw her mother's face. Sophia was still on the bed, her arms wrapped around Rosa's youngest son, Diego, who had apparently decided the scared girl needed his favorite stuffed bear. The police officers were gentle with Sophia. Rosa had to give them that. They asked her questions slowly, carefully, and they called for a doctor to come check her over. Sophia told them everything she remembered. The van that took her, the room where they kept the children, the names she'd heard the men call each other, the voices, the smells, everything her frightened mind had absorbed. One detail made the younger officer go pale. Sophia described a tattoo she'd seen on one of the men's arms. A snake wrapped around a dagger. He showed her a picture on his phone and Sophia nodded immediately. "That's him. That's the man who tied me up." The officer looked at his partner. "This is Los Serpientes, the snake network. We need to call Interpol." Rosa didn't know what Interpol was, but she could tell from the way the officers moved that everything had suddenly become more serious, more real, more dangerous. By noon, her small house was full of people, detectives from the capital city. A woman from child services who wrapped Sophia in a blanket and gave her sweet bread and warm milk. And then, 2 people who were different from the others. They showed badges that said Interpol and introduced themselves as investigators who tracked criminals across countries. The woman, Agent Dubois, had kind eyes but a serious mouth. She sat down next to Rosa while her partner examined the warehouse. "You did an incredibly brave thing," Agent Dubois said, "but I need you to understand something. The people who took Sophia, they're not just local criminals. They're part of an organization we've been tracking for 2 years. They've moved hundreds of children across borders, and they don't like witnesses." Rosa felt the room tilt a little. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that by saving Sophia, by bringing her to us, you've become part of this investigation. And that puts you at risk." "I don't care about risk," Rosa said, though her voice shook. "I care about stopping them from hurting more children." Agent Dubois nodded. "That's what I hoped you'd say. Because we need your help. We need you to remember everything you saw this morning. Every detail, no matter how small. And we need you and Sophia to be willing to testify when we catch these people." "Of course," Rosa said. "Whatever you need." But even as she said it, she saw Lucia standing in the doorway listening. She saw the worry on her daughter's face, and for the first time, Rosa wondered what she'd gotten her family into. The next few hours passed in a blur. Police photographed the warehouse. They found tire tracks and cigarette butts and took everything as evidence. They asked Rosa the same questions over and over, making her describe every moment from when she first saw the shoe to when she carried Sophia home. Agent Dubois' partner, Detective Chen, came back from the warehouse with a grim expression. "There's evidence of recent activity. Multiple people. We found rope fibers that match what was used on the girl. And there are fresh tire tracks leading to the main road. They'll know she's gone by now," Agent Dubois said, "which means they'll be looking for her." Rosa felt her heart sink. "What do we do?" "We move you, tonight, you and Sophia and your family. Somewhere safe where we can protect you while we build our case." "Move us where?" Lucia asked from the doorway. "To a safe house in the city," Detective Chen said. "It's not ideal, but it's necessary. These people don't leave loose ends." Rosa looked around her small house. At the walls her husband had painted. At the table where her children did their homework. At the window that looked out over her field. The field that was all she had left of the life she'd built. "For how long?" she asked. Agent Dubois met her eyes. "I don't know, weeks, maybe months. It depends on how fast we can locate the other members of the network. But my farm, my corn, that's how we eat, how we survive. We'll arrange for someone to water it," Detective Chen said. "But Rosa, you need to understand. If you stay here, you're in danger. Your children are in danger." As if to prove his point, Lucia suddenly pointed out the window. "Mama, there's a truck. It's driving slow like it's looking for something. Everyone moved at once. The officers drew their weapons. Agent Dubois pulled Sophia away from the window. Rosa grabbed her sons and pushed them into the back room. Through the window, Rosa could see a dark pickup truck creeping along the road that passed her property. It slowed down near the warehouse and a man got out. Even from a distance, Rosa could see the tattoos covering his arms. "That's one of them," Sophia whispered, her voice high with panic. "That's the man from yesterday." The officers moved to intercept him, but the man must have seen them because he jumped back in the truck and took off, tires spitting gravel. One of the police cars gave chase, sirens wailing. Rosa held her children close, feeling them shake against her. This was really happening. Those men had come back just like Sophia said they would, and they would keep coming back until they found what they were looking for. "We leave now," Agent Dubois said, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling for backup and a secure transport. Pack one bag each. Just essentials. We move in 15 minutes. Rosa's hands were shaking as she pulled clothes from drawers and stuffed them into an old duffel bag. Lucia helped her brothers pack while crying silently. Diego kept asking if they could bring his soccer ball, and Rosa didn't have the heart to say no, even though there wouldn't be anywhere to play where they were going. Sophia sat on the bed, still clutching the stuffed bear, watching them pack with huge eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This is because of me." Rosa stopped what she was doing and knelt in front of the little girl. "No, baby. This is because of bad men who do bad things. You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I. Sometimes doing the right thing is hard and scary, but that doesn't make it wrong. But you're losing your home." "I'm not losing my home," Rosa said, surprising herself with how certain she sounded. "I'm protecting my family, and I'm helping protect other children like you. That's more important than corn or beans or even this house. Do you understand?" Sophia nodded, but tears ran down her cheeks. Rosa pulled her into a hug, and suddenly all three of her own children were there too, wrapping their arms around both of them. For a moment, in the middle of all the chaos and fear, Rosa felt something else, something strong and solid: purpose. The secure transport arrived 20 minutes later. It was an unmarked van with dark windows. Agent Dubois helped them load their few bags while Detective Chen did one last sweep of the house. As Rosa climbed into the van, she took one last look at her farm. The corn was tall and green, almost ready to harvest. The little house with its crooked door and patched roof looked smaller than ever in the afternoon light. Her chickens pecked in the yard, unaware that everything had changed. "Ready?" the driver asked. Rosa thought about that question. Was she ready to leave everything behind? Ready to step into a world of danger and uncertainty? Ready to be a witness against people who hurt children? She looked at Sophia, sitting between her sons in the back seat. She looked at Lucia, trying so hard to be brave. She thought about 5 other children, somewhere out there, stolen from their families and headed toward something terrible. "Yes," Rosa said. "I'm ready." The safe house was in a part of the city Rosa had never seen before. Tall apartment buildings blocked out the sky, and the streets were full of cars and noise and people rushing everywhere. It was nothing like her quiet village, where she knew every face and every family. The apartment itself was on the 4th floor of a gray concrete building. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and bars on all the windows. Agent Dubois showed them around while 2 officers stood guard in the hallway outside. "I know it's not much," Agent Dubois said, setting down their bags, "but it's secure. Nobody knows you're here except our team. You'll be safe while we work the investigation." Safe. Rosa kept hearing that word, but she didn't feel safe. She felt trapped, like one of her chickens back home in its coop. The city pressed in from all sides, loud and unfamiliar and overwhelming. That first night, none of them slept well. Diego cried for his own bed. Lucia kept checking the locks on the door. Sophia had nightmares and woke up screaming twice. Rosa lay awake in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the city, so different from the crickets and nightbirds she was used to. The next morning, Agent Dubois came back with Detective Chen and another woman, who introduced herself as a child psychologist. They needed to interview Sophia more thoroughly, they explained. Get every detail she could remember while it was still fresh. Rosa sat with Sophia during the interview, holding her hand while the psychologist asked gentle questions. Sophia described the room where they'd kept her and the other children. She remembered some of the things the men had said. She described the truck they'd been put in, how it smelled like gasoline and how dark it was inside. "You're doing so well," the psychologist said. These details are helping us understand how these people operate. Can you remember anything about where the truck was going? Sophia scrunched up her face, thinking hard. The driver said something about the border checkpoint. He said they had papers that would let them through, that nobody would check because they had friends who worked there. Detective Chen and Agent Dubois exchanged a look. Corrupt border officials, Chen said quietly. That explains how they've been moving children without detection. How many operations like this are there? Rosa asked. Agent Dubois hesitated. We've identified at least 3 major trafficking networks operating in this region. The one that took Sophia, they call themselves Los Serpientes. The Snake Network. They're one of the largest and most sophisticated. They have contacts in law enforcement, transportation, everything. That's why we need witnesses like you and Sophia. Without testimony, these people just disappear and start up somewhere else. The weight of it settled on Rosa's shoulders. She wasn't just protecting one little girl anymore. She was part of something much bigger, something that could stop these people from hurting hundreds more children. Over the next few days, they fell into an uneasy routine. Rosa tried to make the apartment feel like home, but everything was wrong. The water tasted different. The sounds were all wrong. There was no space for her boys to run around. No garden to tend, no work to keep her hands busy. Lucia grew quieter each day, staring out the barred windows at the city below. She missed her friends, missed school, missed the life she'd known. Rosa's sons fought more than usual, bottled up energy with nowhere to go. And Sophia stayed close to Rosa constantly, afraid to let her out of sight. Agent Dubois visited every few days with updates. The investigation was progressing, she said. They'd identified several members of Los Serpientes and were tracking their movements. But it was slow work, building a case that would actually stick in court. We found the truck, she told Rosa one afternoon, the one Sophia described. It was abandoned near the border, but forensics found evidence that links it to the network. Hair samples, fingerprints, everything we need to connect it to the suspects. What about the other children? Rosa asked. The ones who were with Sophia. Agent Dubois' face grew somber. We're still looking. These operations move fast. The children could be anywhere by now. But we have alerts out across multiple countries. We're doing everything we can. But Rosa could see the truth in her eyes. Those children might never be found. The thought made her sick. 2 weeks into their stay at the safe house, things got worse. Rosa was cooking dinner when Agent Dubois arrived with Detective Chen and 2 officers she'd never seen before. Their faces were grim. We need to talk, Agent Dubois said, and Rosa knew immediately it was bad news. They sat around the small kitchen table while Lucia took the boys and Sophia into the bedroom and closed the door. We've had a development, Detective Chen said. One of the men we arrested, he's talking, trying to cut a deal. He's given us names, locations, the whole structure of the organization. It's exactly what we needed to move forward. That's good news, isn't it? Rosa asked. It is, Agent Dubois said, but it also means the other members of the network know we're closing in. They're getting desperate. And desperate people do dangerous things. Wait, what are you saying? Detective Chen pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. It was her house, her farm, but something was wrong. The cornfield was burned, black and smoking. The chicken coop was smashed. Someone had spray-painted words on the side of her house, threats she didn't want to translate. Rosa felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. When? Last night. Your neighbors called it in. Nobody was hurt, but the message is clear. They know you're the one who found Sophia. They know you're cooperating with us, and they want you to know they can reach you. My farm, Rosa whispered. All that work? All those months of tending and watering and hoping for a good harvest. Gone in one night because she'd done the right thing. I'm sorry, Agent Dubois said, and she actually sounded like she meant it. I know this is hard, but we can't let them intimidate us. That's what they want. They want you scared enough to back out, to refuse to testify. We can't let them win. Rosa looked at the photograph again, at the destruction of everything she'd built. She thought about running. Taking her children and disappearing somewhere these people could never find them. Starting over somewhere new where nobody knew their names. But then she thought about Sophia's face when Rosa had found her. She thought about 5 other children who were still out there somewhere, scared and alone. She thought about her own daughter, her sons, and what kind of example she was setting for them. I'm not backing out, Rosa said quietly. They can burn my field. They can threaten me, but I'm not going to let them hurt more children. I'm not going to let them win. Agent Dubois smiled, a real smile this time. That's what I hoped you'd say. Because we're ready to move to the next phase. We're going to arrest the main leaders of Los Serpientes, and we need you and Sofia to agree to testify in court. It won't be easy. The trial could take months. You'll have to face these people and tell your story in front of everyone. Are you sure you're ready for that? Rosa thought about it. Really thought about it. She thought about her simple life before all of this, when her biggest worry was whether it would rain enough for her corn to grow. That life was gone now, burned along with her field. But she also thought about the strength she'd found in herself these past weeks. She'd always thought of herself as weak, as just a poor farmer with nothing to offer the world. But she'd saved a child. She'd stood up to evil. She'd made a choice to do what was right even when it cost her everything. Yes, Rosa said, I'm ready. That night, after Agent Dubois and the others left, Rosa sat with her children and Sofia at the small kitchen table. She'd made rice and beans, the same meal they'd eaten 1,000 times back home, but it didn't taste the same in this place. I need to tell you all something, Rosa said. Our farm is gone. Bad people destroyed it because they're angry at us for helping Sofia. They want us to be scared. They want us to give up. Diego started crying. Lucia put her face in her hands. Even Sofia looked devastated, like this was somehow her fault. But here's what I want you to understand, Rosa continued, her voice getting stronger. Those people took something from us. They took our home and our crops and our normal life, but they can't take what really matters. They can't take our family. They can't take our courage. And they can't take away the fact that we did something good. We saved Sofia, and we're going to help save other children too. But Mama, Lucia said, her voice breaking, what are we going to do? Where are we going to live? How are we going to eat? I don't know yet, Rosa admitted. But we'll figure it out. We always do. The important thing is we stay together and we don't let fear win. Can you be brave for me? Can you trust that everything will be okay? Her children nodded, though she could see the doubt in their eyes. But Sofia, the little girl who'd lost so much more than they had, reached across the table and took Rosa's hand. Thank you, Sofia whispered, for not giving up on me, for not sending me away when the bad things started happening. Rosa felt tears sting her eyes. Never, she said. We don't give up on people who need us. That's not who we are. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, Rosa stood at the barred window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, the men who'd hurt Sofia were planning their next move. Somewhere out there, other children were in danger, waiting for someone to save them. Rosa pressed her hand against the cold glass and made a silent promise. She would see this through. She would testify. She would help bring these people to justice no matter what it cost her, because some things were more important than cornfields and houses and comfortable lives. Some things were worth fighting for, even when you were scared. Especially when you were scared. The city hummed and buzzed below her, indifferent to her struggles, indifferent to her pain. But Rosa stood firm in the darkness, a poor farmer who'd found something in herself she never knew was there. Courage. 3 months had passed since Rosa first found Sofia behind that warehouse. 3 months of living in the safe house, 3 months of interviews and questions and waiting. Rosa had learned more about criminal investigations than she ever wanted to know. Agent Dubois became a regular presence in their lives, showing up 2 or 3 times a week with updates and new questions. She always brought something for the children, coloring books or small toys trying to make the situation easier. Rosa appreciated it, but nothing could really make this easier. We've made significant progress, Agent Dubois said one morning, spreading photographs across the kitchen table. These are the men we've identified as part of Los Serpientes. Thanks to your testimony and Sofia's, we've been able to connect them to multiple cases across 5 countries. Rosa looked at the faces, hard faces, cold eyes, men who wouldn't think twice about hurting a child. One of them had the snake tattoo Sofia had described. Another looked surprisingly normal, like someone's uncle or neighbor. That somehow made it worse. This man here, Agent Dubois pointed to a photograph. His name is Hector Vega. He's one of the leaders. We believe he's been running this operation for at least 5 years, moving children across borders, selling them to people who want cheap labor or worse. Rosa felt sick. How many children? We've documented at least 200 cases that we can prove. But we think the real number is much higher. Many families don't report when their children go missing, especially in poor areas. They think nobody will care or that it's hopeless to try. And you can stop them. With what we're telling you? Agent Dubois nodded. Yes, but we need more than just testimony. We need physical evidence that connects these men to specific crimes. That's where your memory becomes crucial. You said you heard voices that morning at the warehouse. Can you describe them? Rosa closed her eyes, trying to remember. It had been so early, so dark. But yes, she'd heard something. Voices in the distance, men talking. One had a deep voice, she said slowly. Rough, like he smoked too much. And there was another one, higher pitched. He sounded nervous, like he was worried about something. Did you hear any names? Anything they said? Rosa concentrated hard. The nervous one said something about a schedule. About needing to move before dawn because someone was coming. And the other one laughed and said not to worry, that they had everything under control. Agent Dubois was writing everything down. What about smells? Did you notice anything unusual? Cigarettes, Rosa said. But not the cheap ones I know. Something different. Sweeter, maybe. And diesel fuel. Strong like from a big truck. Excellent. We found cigarette butts at the warehouse. If we can match the brand to purchases made by our suspects, it's more evidence. Same with the diesel. There are only a few types of trucks that use that specific fuel mixture. Over the following weeks, Rosa found herself remembering more details she didn't even know she'd noticed. The color of paint on the warehouse wall where someone had leaned. Tire tracks that looked newer than others. A piece of fabric caught on a nail that Agent Dubois' team had collected and traced to a specific type of work uniform. Each tiny detail added to the case, building a picture of what had happened and who was responsible. Rosa started to understand how investigations worked. It wasn't like in the movies where everything happened fast. It was slow, careful work, collecting evidence piece by piece until you had enough to prove your case beyond doubt. Detective Chen came by one afternoon with news that made Rosa's heart race. We've located 2 of the other children who were taken with Sophia, 2 sisters, ages 9 and 11. They were found working in a factory across the border. Underage, no papers, treated like slaves. Are they okay? Rosa asked. Scared, malnourished, but alive. They're being cared for now.
And they're willing to testify, too.
Their stories match Sophia's exactly. Same van, same warehouse, same men. It's all fitting together. But good news was always followed by bad news. Later that week, Agent Dubois arrived with a troubled expression. We have a problem. One of our witnesses, a man who was helping us identify network members, he's disappeared. His family says he went out one morning and never came back. Rosa felt cold. Did they? We don't know. But it's a reminder that these people are still out there, still dangerous. Which is why I need to ask you something difficult. The prosecution wants to move forward with arrests. But once we do that, once we take these men into custody, you and Sophia will be identified as key witnesses. Your names will be in official documents. Defense attorneys will know who you are. Isn't that what we've been working toward? Yes, but it also means you'll need to testify in open court. You'll have to face these men and tell your story to a judge and jury. They'll try to discredit you, make you seem unreliable or like you're lying. It won't be easy. Rosa looked across the room where Sophia was teaching Diego how to draw flowers. The little girl had nightmares less often now, smiled more. She called Rosa Tia, aunt, and had started talking about what she wanted to be when she grew up. A teacher, she said, so she could help other kids learn. I'll do it, Rosa said. Whatever it takes. There's something else, Agent Dubois said quietly. The prosecution is offering you a reward. Money from a victims fund. Enough to rebuild your farm, maybe even buy more land. It's compensation for everything you've lost by helping us. Rosa blinked in surprise. Money. Real money. Enough to give her children a better life. But looking at Agent Dubois' face, she could tell there was a catch. But, Rosa prompted, but taking the money means agreeing to permanent relocation. You can't go back to your village. It's not safe, and it probably never will be. Los Serpientes has long memories. You'd need to start over somewhere new. Leave forever. Never see her neighbors again, never walk the land her husband had worked, never visit his grave. The thought hurt more than she expected. Can I think about it? Rosa asked. Of course. You have time. The trial won't start for at least 2 months. We need to gather more evidence, prepare our witnesses, make sure everything is solid. 2 months felt like forever and no time at all. Rosa spent those weeks preparing, going over her testimony with prosecutors, learning how to answer questions clearly and confidently. They practiced cross-examination, where defense lawyers would try to confuse her or make her doubt herself. "They'll say you're making it up for attention," the prosecutor, a serious woman named Patricia Fuentes, told her. "They'll say you're after money. They'll try to paint you as unreliable. How will you respond?" "With the truth," Rosa said. "I'll tell them exactly what happened. I'll tell them about finding Sophia and hearing her story. I'll tell them I'm not a liar and neither is she." Sophia went through the same preparation, though they were gentler with her. The psychologist worked with her to help her feel safe telling her story. They explained that the courtroom would be scary, but that Rosa would be there and police officers and people who wanted to help. "Will I have to look at the bad men?" Sophia asked one day. "Only if you feel strong enough," the psychologist said. "But remember, they can't hurt you anymore. They'll be behind bars and there will be guards everywhere. You're safe." As the trial date approached, Rosa noticed changes in herself. She stood straighter, spoke more confidently. The scared farmer who'd found a child in the darkness seemed like a different person now. This Rosa knew her own strength, knew what she was capable of when it mattered. Lucia noticed too. "Mama, you seem different," she said one evening. "Different how?" "Stronger. Like you're not afraid anymore." Rosa thought about that. "I'm still afraid," she admitted. "But I've learned that being afraid doesn't mean you can't be brave. Sometimes being brave means doing scary things anyway." The day before the trial began, Agent Dubois came by with final preparations, security details where they'd enter the courthouse, what to expect. But she also brought something else. "A folder full of photographs. I thought you should see this," she said, opening the folder. "These are some of the children we've recovered since the investigation began. 23 children found and returned to their families, all because you had the courage to speak up." Rosa looked at the faces. Young faces, scared faces, but alive, safe. 23 children who might have disappeared forever if she'd walked past that pink shoe, if she decided it wasn't her problem. "There's more," Agent Dubois continued. "Los Serpientes wasn't just operating here. They had connections to networks in other countries. By breaking this case open, we've been able to share intelligence with police across the region. Other organizations are being investigated now. Other children are being saved. All because you refused to look away." Rosa felt tears on her cheeks. All of this, all the sacrifice and fear and pain, it meant something. It really meant something. That night, Rosa couldn't sleep. Tomorrow she would walk into a courtroom and face the men who'd tried to destroy her life for doing the right thing. Tomorrow she would tell her story to the world and hope it was enough for justice. She got up and found Sophia sitting in the living room, unable to sleep either. They sat together in the darkness, holding hands. "Are you scared?" Sophia asked. "Terrified," Rosa admitted. "But I'm going to do it anyway." "We both are. Because some things are more important than being scared. Like stopping bad people from hurting more kids?" "Exactly like that." Sophia leaned against Rosa's shoulder. "When this is over, will you still be my Tia? Even if I have to go live with a new family?" Rosa hugged her tight. "Always, forever. No matter where you go or what happens, you'll always be part of my family. That's a promise." As dawn broke over the city, Rosa stood at the window and watched the sun rise. Somewhere in a courthouse across town, a judge was preparing. Lawyers were gathering their notes. Police were bringing prisoners from their cells. And Rosa, a poor farmer who'd stumbled onto something bigger than she'd ever imagined, was ready to tell the truth, ready to fight, ready to make sure that what happened to Sophia never happened to another child if she could help it. The trial was about to begin. The courthouse was bigger than any building Rosa had ever been inside. Marble floors, high ceilings, and security guards everywhere. Her hands were shaking as Agent Dubois led her through the metal detectors and down a long hallway to a private waiting room. "Remember what we practiced," Agent Dubois said gently. "Look at the prosecutor when you answer, not at the defendants. Speak clearly, and most importantly, just tell the truth. That's all you need to do." Rosa nodded, but her mouth was dry. Through the wall, she could hear the murmur of voices, the courtroom filling with people. Reporters, she'd been told. Members of the public. Family members of other missing children. Everyone wanted to see justice done. When they called her name, Rosa's legs felt weak. But she stood up, smoothed down the simple dress Agent Dubois had helped her pick out, and walked through those courtroom doors. The room was enormous. Rows of benches filled with faces, all turned toward her. A judge sat at the high desk in front, a woman with gray hair and serious eyes. And there, at a table to the left, sat 5 men in prison jumpsuits. The members of Los Serpientes. Rosa's eyes found Hector Vega, the leader. He was staring at her with cold, hard eyes, trying to intimidate her. For a moment, Rosa felt that old fear creep back. This man had destroyed her farm, threatened her family, hurt countless children, and now she had to stand here and speak against him. But then she remembered Sophia's face that morning in the warehouse. She remembered the 23 children in those photographs. She remembered her own children, watching her leave this morning with pride and worry mixed on their faces. Rosa lifted her chin and walked to the witness stand. The prosecutor, Patricia Fuentes, started with easy questions: her name, where she lived, what she did for work, getting Rosa comfortable. Then they moved into that morning, that moment when everything changed. "Tell us what you saw when you approached the warehouse," Patricia said. Rosa took a deep breath and began. She described the pink shoe, the sound of crying, finding Sophia tied up and terrified. She spoke about the voices she'd heard, the cigarette smell, the tire tracks, every detail she could remember. "And what did you do when you found the child?" "I untied her and took her home. I knew I had to get help, but I also knew she needed to feel safe first. She was so scared, so hurt. I couldn't just leave her there." "Did you think about your own safety? About what might happen if the people who took her came back?" Rosa paused, thinking about that. "No," she said honestly. "I didn't think about any of that. I just saw a child who needed help and I helped her. That's what any decent person would do." She could see some people in the courtroom nodding. A woman in the front row was crying quietly. Patricia walked Rosa through everything that happened next. The police, the investigation, the threats, the destruction of her farm. Rosa's voice stayed steady, even when talking about watching her home and livelihood burn. "Why didn't you stop cooperating when these people threatened you?" Patricia asked. "Because stopping wouldn't have made my children safer," Rosa said. "It would have just meant Sophia suffered for nothing. It would have meant other children kept getting hurt. I couldn't live with that." When it was the defense attorney's turn to question her, Rosa was ready. He was a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit, and he tried to make her look unreliable. "Isn't it true you're receiving money for your testimony?" he asked, his voice suggesting something dirty about it. "I'm receiving compensation for losing my farm and having to relocate my family," Rosa corrected. "That's not the same thing. I would have testified either way. The money doesn't change what happened. But you admit you have a financial interest in the outcome of this trial." "I have an interest in keeping children safe," Rosa said firmly. "If that's a financial interest, then yes. But mostly it's a human interest. Those men hurt a child. They hurt many children. That's what matters, not money." The attorney tried several more times to shake her story, to find inconsistencies. But Rosa had told the truth, and the truth doesn't change. Every time he asked a question, she answered it the same way she'd answered it before. Because it was what actually happened. When Rosa finally stepped down from the witness stand, she felt exhausted but also lighter somehow. She'd done it. She'd told her story and nobody had been able to make her doubt it or take it back. Sophia testified next, though they let her do it in a separate room with a video connection so she wouldn't have to see the defendants. Rosa watched from the waiting room as the little girl, so much braver than any child should have to be, described her kidnapping and captivity. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Other witnesses came forward. Police testified about evidence. Experts explained the trafficking networks and how they operated. The prosecution built their case piece by piece, showing not just that these men had taken children, but that they'd done it systematically, repeatedly, as part of an organized criminal enterprise. The defense tried to create doubt. They suggested Sophia had run away and made up the story. They implied Rosa was seeking attention or money. They questioned every piece of evidence. But the truth was overwhelming. Too many witnesses, too much physical evidence, too many children found who all told the same story. Rosa attended every day of the trial, sitting in the courtroom gallery with Agent Dubois beside her. She wanted those men to see her, to know she hadn't backed down. She wanted them to understand they hadn't won. On the final day, after both sides had presented everything and the jury had deliberated, they all gathered to hear the verdict. Rosa held Lucia's hand on one side and Sophia's on the other. Her boys sat behind her with the child services worker who'd been caring for Sophia. The jury foreman stood. In the case of the people versus Hector Vega and others, We find the defendants guilty on all counts." The courtroom erupted. People cheered and cried. Rosa felt Lucia squeeze her hand so hard it hurt, but she didn't mind. Sophia buried her face in Rosa's shoulder and sobbed, not from sadness but from relief. The judge sentenced them one by one. Hector Vega got life in prison without possibility of parole. The others received sentences ranging from 25 to 40 years. They would grow old behind bars, unable to hurt any more children. As they led the defendants away, Hector Vega looked at Rosa one last time. But this time Rosa didn't feel afraid. She looked right back at him, steady and strong. "You lost," her eyes said. "Good people won." After the trial, life slowly started to return to something like normal, though normal meant something different now. Rosa accepted the money from the victims' fund and used it to buy a small farm in a different region, far from her old village, but similar enough to feel like home. The land was good, better than her old plot. She planted corn and beans again, teaching her children the skills her husband had taught her. Lucia started school in town and made new friends. Diego and his brother joined a soccer team. They were healing, all of them, building a new life from the pieces of their old one. Sophia visited once a month with her new foster family. They were good people, patient and kind, who understood what she'd been through. Sophia was going to therapy and doing well in school. She still had nightmares sometimes, but they were less frequent. She was learning to be a child again. One afternoon, Rosa and Sophia were working in the garden together, when Sophia asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Tia Rosa, do you ever regret it? Finding me, I mean. All the things that happened because of it?" Rosa set down her hoe and looked at the girl who'd changed her life. "Never," she said firmly. "Not once." "You know why?" Sophia shook her head. "Because before all this, I thought I was nobody, just a poor farmer trying to survive. I didn't think I mattered or that anything I did made a difference. But I was wrong. I saved you. I helped save 23 other children. I helped stop bad people from hurting more kids. That matters. That means something. You were always somebody," Sophia said softly, "even before you found me. You were good and kind and brave. You just didn't know it yet." Rosa felt tears in her eyes. "Out of the mouths of children," her grandmother used to say. "The deepest truths come from the youngest voices." 6 months after the trial, Rosa received a letter from Interpol. It was from Agent Dubois, but attached was something else. An official commendation from Interpol's director, thanking her for her crucial role in breaking up an international trafficking network. The letter explained that her testimony and cooperation had led to further investigations in 3 other countries. 17 more arrests had been made. 42 children had been recovered and returned to their families. 42 children. Rosa read that number over and over. 42 families who got their children back because she hadn't walked past that pink shoe. The letter also mentioned that they were using her case as an example in training programs, teaching other witnesses that ordinary people could make extraordinary differences, that you didn't need to be rich or powerful or important to stand up for what was right.